Hi, my name is Jane Nicole Ryland, and I am presenting on the usage of videotaping readers for effects on self-correcting and self-monitoring. First, I'd like to begin with a little background on my research. I'm doing my internship in a third grade classroom, and one of the first activities my mentor had me do was Rigby assessments about the reading for each student individually. So I was learning about their reading accuracy, their self-correction, and their comprehension. This gave me a chance to really connect with the students and know and have insight about what they knew. That, coupled with the literature that I will speak about in just a little bit, that was an initiative for my study. To give you a little preview of my study, so you have an idea of how it went while I go through my presentation, I videotaped students in their small groups while they were reading. As a group, we watched the video, we took notes, and we collected information so they can make improvements in their self-correcting and self-monitoring abilities and skills. For the literature, I broke the literature up into 4 sections. The first section is self-correcting. Self-correction correlates with reading accuracy. That has been proven through research, and so when I was doing the Rigby assessment, it showed correlation with their self-correction and their reading accuracy. Self-correcting is when students miscue a word, they botch it up somehow, and they go back and they successfully fix what was said. I noticed this was an issue with my students. They would either shush it or they would stumble over it and just kind of skip over it. So I wanted to improve their self-correction. When their reading accuracy is better, their comprehension can be better. I read an article by Manning where she wrote in 2002 where she talked about, is reading really reading if students aren't understanding? I found this to be so true, where I worked with two girls in a small group. One girl reads word by word, and it's not very fluent at all, yet she has great comprehension. However, the other girl reads beautifully, very fluently. However, her comprehension isn't very good, so they have opposite strengths. And so when I was looking at that one girl, I was like, if she's reading so fluently, but she's not comprehending, is she reading at all? And so I wanted their reading accuracy to improve so that we could also see improvement on their comprehension. And if they have better self-monitoring skills, if they're understanding as they go, as they read, their comprehension should be better. The third one, our kids are in the game generation. Dix wrote about this in his article, and he talked to the students that we are teaching today. They're having conversations about their newest game on Wii or DS or what's been going on in World of Warcraft. As a teacher, I don't need to compete with that, but I need to pull technology into the classroom to know that students know that we have technology outside the classroom, but we also integrate it into our practice in the classroom. So if this is who the students we're teaching to, we need to do strategies that are similar to that. That really gave me the push on doing a video as well. Lastly, students need to take ownership for their learning. As best practice strategies, we know that teachers, we need to scaffold, we need to assess regularly, but it's also important that students are taking responsibility for their learning, that they are seeing what they're doing, they're taking the intrinsic motivation to make improvements. And again, for the video, we realize that they are watching the video, they can, right afterwards, see how well they did, what they can do to make changes, and then make the changes. They're taking ownership for their learning. That's how I wanted the strategy to go. Once I had all that foundation built, then I gathered and worked on my study. My participants were 10 students in the Department of Defense independent schools in Germany. They received parent and principal permission and approval. The 10 students were grouped into 3 small groups that they were used for a guided reading or for their lit circle. First, we did pre-test. I gave the Rigby assessment for the reading. This calculated their reading accuracy, their self-correction, and their comprehension so that I could see their self-monitoring. The students also did a checklist on their own reading habits. Again, taking ownership for what they know and what they do to read. After the pre-test, I was ready to implement the strategy. The study ran for 3 weeks, and it was the exact same for each week. So for each group, I pulled the group, I videotaped the students individually reading as a group. I put it on my computer. As a group, a couple days later, we would watch the video. The students would take notes in the reading. I would take notes. We held a discussion, and we did this for 3 weeks. Here's the way that I collected data. This first form is the form I filled out as a student. I wrote in quotes that the students were saying during discussion, goals that they had from week to week so that we could go back and make improvement. Students also filled out a student self-assessment form. This asks them how often they reread, which goes with self-correction, and if this strategy of doing the video and having a discussion, did it help their own reading. Then we did post-tests, which is the same as our pre-test. Students that took the reassessment kept on their same level, but just a different text. They also did the same checklist. Now I was able to calculate my results. First, I had the lesson plans. The lesson plans that I had for reading helped me stay accountable for what I was doing in the classroom and how we progressed. Then I took the notes, just like on that form. Here's an example of what I was able to gather from the notes. This quote, week 2, participant number 2 stated, I repeated so many words. I should stop repeating so much, but I did it because I didn't know the words. And that same discussion, he went on to talk about how he would self-correct so that he could understand better. So he was using the words to make improvements in his own reading. In that student self-assessment form, one of the questions was, how often did you reread something because it did not make sense? This, along with the next question on the next slide, did not show significant evidence. Students were either went straight forward, that they did not have any change, or we had ones that thought that it made improvements or did not make improvements, as well as this one, because each of the colored lines are a different participant, so it did not show significant results either way. Results from the Rigby test. Either the students they stayed the same, or they went up or down, so this did not show. The comprehension check, our post-test scores were in yellow, and we wanted them to increase to show self-monitoring, so yes, we showed improvement. Self-correction, no, we wanted the yellow to go down, and it did not overall. The discussion, what the results show. The results show that self-monitoring skills did go up because our comprehension scores did go up. So there's no significant effects with self-correcting because of our strategy. What the results don't show is that students improve in other areas, such as fluency and expression. It also there's a lot of interest in the study. Students wanted to be videotaped, and they wanted to see their videotapes. They showed intrinsic motivation to make improvements, and they had ownership and awareness of what they were doing and how they could make improvements. My limitations, my time. It only ran for 3 weeks, so that was limited, but also, since we were in the classroom and I was working with a small group, the other students were working independently, so time management and classroom management were a challenge. Other reading areas, since they were focused on the expression of fluency because the kids could hear that and they could see themselves, they were taking a lot of strides in there, but not as many with self-correcting and self-monitoring. Future implications. Maybe in the future I would use this strategy to check awareness of students in their reading, or use this for another reading strategy such as fluency or expression, since it seems to focus on those areas. And would I use this strategy again in my classroom? Absolutely. It pulled in that game generation, and I could see improvements with my students. Lastly is my references for my research. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.